mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 4, Episode 7 of FX and Hulu's Atlanta, entitled Snipe Hunt. Before I get started real quick though, I want to remind you guys, I've been saying this on like my last 3 or so videos, I want you guys to follow me on social media. You see my Twitter handle is right there on the chyron below at One Mic Network. And the reason I say that is just because I'm going to start being more active on there, trying to build more of a social media presence. And I'll post like, not news, but like, I post just like verbal updates. I made one on YouTube a while back when I decided I wasn't going to cover Rings of Power anymore. And some people saw it, but there were still people that were like, yo, what happened to Rings of Power coverage? Even though I posted also on social media, on my Facebook page, that's One Mic, you can just search that, and on Twitter. And, I want you guys to be aware of anything that I might have going on. I'm going to be using that to update and stuff like that. So I just think it's important you guys should follow me on social media, just so you can get that extra kind of, I don't want to say content, but that extra information. And I'm going to be way more active on there. I live tweet fights and stuff when I'm watching them as well. So that's going to be, if you're a fight fan, boxing, MMA, you're going to want to be following me on there prior to tomorrow. Because there's a lot, if you're a fight fan, there's a lot going on tomorrow. So I'm going to be on there pretty much all day. So that's another reason to follow as well. But I just wanted to put you guys up on that. Follow, don't follow, whatever. But I want to give you guys the information for you to make the choice. So I'm going to be using it more. I encourage you to follow me on there. Now, I saw this episode because I think this episode, well, for one, the title Snipe Hunt refers to this activity that Van learned in Girl Scouts that they do on this camping trip, they being Ern, Lottie, and Van. And the snipe hunt thing is the one thing that's very true to Atlanta. Well, everything about this episode is very true to Atlanta, but I think it's very Atlanta-ish that they would have this snipe hunt thing and something would go wrong with that part of it. Like, what is that? Is that a real snipe? Like, what? Is that a real snipe? Like, what the fuck was that? But I thought this was a really good episode because this episode did one of the other things that I think Atlanta does really well. Last week I talked about the way they can just be like really fucking funny, but they can also balance that with a little bit of pop culture commentary. And last week I was saying that it was more open commentary and that accepting commentary. Like, a lot of people can quote unquote get it. This episode had an interesting examination of Lottie and Ern's relationship. And this show, Atlanta, does really good when it wants to like really dive deep into this character stuff. And, seeing where, Lottie and Van stand versus where they want to go, told through the lens of this awkward camping trip, I think was a really interesting way of giving us an idea of something that we really haven't had a very clear picture of as of late. Like, we haven't even seen Van that much in these last 2 seasons, let alone got a strong idea of where they stand as a couple. And this backdrop of this camping trip, I think it worked really well. And, I'm going to save that for a moment because I want to talk about that a little bit later. But we see a new side of Van and Ern via their thoughts and feelings that they share during this trip, especially as it pertains to their relationship and this potential move to LA that we learned about in I don't remember what episode number it was, but it was the one where Ern told that to that therapist. And I've liked Van during the entirety of this show, but I could not stand her in this episode. And I think this is something that Hiro Murai, the director of this episode, and a lot of the episodes of Atlanta, one of the things that I think he did well in this episode is tying the environment to the characters' relationships and how they behaved. And I wonder, and I want to pose this as a question to you guys, if you feel like I feel, which is that I felt like my perspective on Van and her behavior is one of those things that it's tied to who I am as a man. Like, I looked at her behavior a certain way through the lens of a man, essentially through Ern's, lens. And I'm wondering if after I give my perspective on what I took away from their relationship during this episode, I'm curious if women took away something different. So I'm going to talk about what I took away from Van's behavior and what I felt that reflected about the nature of their relationship. So For me, it felt like Van, for this entire trip, she came in with a very pessimistic mindset that resulted in her being very combative and hypercritical pretty much the entire time. You know, when we open the episode, Van and Ern are driving. Ern's driving. Van's in the passenger seat. Lottie's in the back. She's telling him to slow down, and he doesn't say anything. So immediately I'm kind of like, okay, I know this situation. Like, no man wants to be backseat drivered, you know, especially if he's just like, he wasn't driving recklessly like 90 miles an hour, but he's just driving to a campground and she's like, I think you should slow down. It's like, no man wants to hear that shit. Like, unless he's being dangerous, chill the fuck out, right? But she tells him to slow down. And I'm gonna get to how that plays out in a moment, but I want to start by kind of running through a little bit of you know, some of the things that she did that I just found to be a little like, why are you being this way? He breaks out this tent, this 12-person tent, this thing that he bought, you know, to impress his family, right? You know, a man buys this 12-person tent. That's telling us this was expensive, but I as a man bought it because I want to, this is how I as a man show my affection to you, in that I didn't care how much money this cost. I thought it would be super fucking cool to have this big 12-person tent with different rooms and a porch and all this kind of shit. And she just goes, oh man, we're gonna be really cold in there. Like, what? Like, what? Why are you being so critical? Like, if she had come in with a positive mindset, she might have been, you know, she might have still felt that way, but she might have been like, oh, wow, that's cool. Like, this is going to be an awesome tent. And then maybe, like, later and been like, yo, we might want some extra blankets because, you know, it is going to get kind of cold. But for him to, like, lay that out, like, oh, this is a super cool tent and you're going to love it. And it's so big. And, all, you know, he's really hype about this tent. And all she can go is, oh, we going to be cold in there. Like, that felt super negative, man. And then there's the scene later where they're like walking through this kind of like swampish kind of area, and Ern wants to cross the water. He's like, well, we could do it this way, we could do it this way. And Van's like, nah. Van's just like, no, we're not gonna do that. You know, that she's coming up with every reason that could go wrong, which again is a valid response, but you could feel it. Like, if you've been there in a situation where you're in a relationship that might not be working well, or maybe the relationship's fine, but you are in the midst of a fight, you can tell when somebody's criticism is coming from a place of wanting to help versus coming from a place of, I'm not feeling this and I got a fucked up attitude, so I'm just gonna say whatever kind of critical shit that comes to mind. And the problem here is that she's right about these things, right? But like I said, it felt like it came from such a negative place. Like, she came in with this negative mindset and just wanted to be critical. Obviously, that would be subconscious, but, you know, unfortunately is what always seems to happen. Even though I could tell she was in a negative mindset and that seemed to prompt and force her criticisms, the universe saw fit to validate her. You know, they get to the campgrounds and the campground guy is like, yeah, you know, Ern, I'm gonna need you to go about 5 miles an hour because there's kids, like all this kind of shit. And it's like, you know, really, like, Vern might have been, Vern could be their, like, what the like relationship name, like hashtag Vern, Van and Ern. Ern might have been going like 15 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour, something that's not crazy at all. But it does seem like, and this could be just from a man perspective too, when you know deep down that a woman's criticism is not coming from the right place, it almost always seems that the universe still makes them be right just to make it worse for you. Instead of, like, you know, really it's like, well, however fast he was going, it probably didn't fucking matter, which is why he didn't say anything. But then to get checked like that, it's probably like really universe. But campsite guy tells him to slow down. Ern does get cold in the tent, and it's just like, oh, like, if it felt like it came from a place of positivity, in that I want you to be safe, don't drive so fast, or, you know, this tent is awesome, but if we're all spaced out, we don't have the shared body heat, we're gonna get cold. Cool. But it never felt that way. And I like that Hiro Murai kind of, with this episode, he, without having anyone really verbalize it, there's a tension that's there, and a negativity that's unspoken. And I think that tension that runs throughout this episode, it really comes from a place of, well, I think, because I like, when I was watching it, I was wondering, like, why am I feeling this tension? What is causing this? And I think it's because of the incredibly loud silence that's in this episode. You know, you got the silence of just this campsite where no one's around, but you also have this kind of coupled with these long shots of nature where you hear nothing but like crickets and birds and shit. You know, you had the one where Lottie's just kind of like staring across the water, and I'm expecting to see like a fucking Sasquatch or something across the water or some weird person, but it wasn't about that. We know that Atlanta can do that, and I think Hiro Murai kind of use that against us, the way that we're going to lean into thinking something weird or scary or strange is going to happen, and to help kind of use that to add to that tension. Because I'm sitting there like, what's going to happen? And nothing happens. But I think the point of these long shots, there's another where Lottie's walking around, there's another at the toward the end after their car drives away, after they leave the campsite, and I feel like all of that was really there just for us to like experience that feeling that you have if you've been in a relationship and say you and your significant other get into an argument, but you're still like forced to be around each other, like you're in the same room or you're out in public or whatever, and you're not talking to each other, and there's that silent tension. How do you recreate that? And I think that's why Hiro Murai used this backdrop of this campsite and this really quiet and serene place to kind of help recreate that feeling. And that's what I was feeling here, and I think that's why he did that. And if so, if I'm right, this is a brilliant fucking move because it worked. But like, that's how I approach things. Like, you know, I'm wondering, why am I feeling this tension? And you guys might watch it and just be like, man, this is intense. I'm sitting there like, why am I feeling this? Because nothing's happening. And you know, when you think about it, you think about how this show handles that kind of like, sometimes it can like dip its toe into like horror kind of shit, right? And you think about that silence and what it's like to be around someone when you know there's an awkward thing that either just happened or that needs to happen, but no one wants to talk about it. The quiet of this woods, I think, recreated that feeling, and I thought it was really a brilliant move by Hiro Murai. I see like the light coming from my window is now casting upon the backdrop here, but this builds up to their final convo about LA while Lottie is asleep. And Ern starts by saying that he could find anyone. Because earlier in the episode, Van asserts that he only wants to do it because he doesn't want to be alone. And he's like, you know, I could find anyone, which is a bad start. Like, look, you know who the fuck I am. Like, I'm going to find somebody. Like, I'm not going to be able... That's a bad start. But the point he seems to be on the path to making is that it's not about being alone. Like, I cannot be alone. It's about wanting to be there with you and wanting to be there with her. And then again, with the negativity, she cynically is like, ask him if he wants to, you know, if he wants, because wants a co-parenting arrangement. And I'm like, why is she being such an asshole? Like just fucking listen to him. Like, why is she, like, her every move, every action from Vanna this episode seemed rooted in just being negative. But again, if you're in a situation, again, that argument space where it's like you argued or you're about to argue and you don't want to talk about it and there's that silent tension, I think when you come in with that energy, that's what that creates. And Ern wasn't coming with that energy, and she was. But again, like I said, that could be just my perspective as a man. So I'd be interested in hearing what the women think. But when he does arrive at telling her that he wants her to be there, we get even more like cynical negativity from Van. You know, she's like, just because you love me as Lottie's mom. Like, he didn't fucking say that. Like, what do you mean he loves you as her mom? Like, that, now you're putting your negativity on him. Like, he's coming from a wrong place because that's where you're at right now. And that was just really, really obnoxious to me. But then he moves into talking about loving her. It's a great scene. It's a great acting performance from Donald Glover. He cries in this scene, and he basically makes it known, like, it's about you, it's about her, it's about wanting us to be a family. And I thought that was really, I don't want to say big of him, because that's what you do as a man. Even if that's where you are, you don't let these other circumstances change that. So even though for me, Van's been like an asshole on this whole trip, him explaining, like, you know, despite that, this is how I feel. It was, I think, a good moment for Ern and a good performance from Donald Glover, and she agrees to go. But given her mindset coming into the trip, and even during this conversation with the co-parenting and love me as Lottie's mom, I wonder if she only agreed because of how he declared his love and how dramatic and passionate it was. You know, there's lots of episodes left, you know, lots being 3, but between now and the end of this show ever. So there's, time for that to shift. And I'm wondering if that's what's going to happen. Like, she agreed now because she was just in that moment. But say come episode 9 or 10, when it's time to actually make the move, she's going to realize, like, look, I don't know if I feel the same way about you that you feel about me. I'm hoping that's not where it goes, but I did hear that this is supposed to have a very emotional ending. So I guess we'll see. Last thing I want to talk about real quick before I wrap up. I liked how Lottie's mood seemed to be tied to theirs. So like what I was saying about how the environment speaks to the mood of these characters and how Van and Ern's interactions spoke to their moods. The entire time that they're in this space of like awkward negativity, Lottie's there too. She's not feeling the shit. She feels very like, I don't really want to be here. This isn't really cool. And I liked portraying the idea that their uncomfortable situation was being essentially kind of like passed down emotionally to Lottie. And, when they got past that awkwardness after the conversation about LA and Van deciding or saying that she would go, once they ironed all that shit out, I liked how Lottie's mood shifted. In that final shot, we see her smiling at them at the end. And I think that's to say essentially that their mood was contagious. When they were dreading the LA conversation, Lottie was not enjoying the trip. And one might look at it as Lottie was happy that they were leaving because she wasn't feeling it. But I think it was more about, once they got that out of the way, and now it's like, okay, now we're going to LA as a family, and Ern feels good about it, Van feels good about it, even though nothing was spoken in that car, that energy was absorbed by Lottie, and she felt that, and she was happy. So I like what they did here in this episode. I found this episode to be very indicative of what it's like to be in one of these situations where your relationship is at a crux and you don't really know what direction it's going to go. And, I thought they did a really good job of conveying that level of tension, that level of like nervousness, uneasiness in a way that makes you feel that without actually having to deal with it. And I think, using this silent woods and these long shots of the woods and having Lottie kind of like be on the same shit that they're on, I thought it was a really smart move. So enjoyable episode. We have 3 left. I would imagine we are probably going to have 1 or 2 more weird/funny ones. And then that finale is probably going to kick us in the balls and we're going to really be upset that this show is ending. But until next week, peace.